Welcome to lesson 2-4. Today we're going to talk about writing linear equations. Pause the video and get these written down before hitting play and continuing on. First vocab term we have is slope-intercept form. That's an equation written in the form of y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. We also have point-slope form, and that's an equation written in the form of y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1, where x1 and y1 are the coordinates of a point on the line and m is our slope. Parallel is when two lines have the same slope. Perpendicular, two lines whose slopes have a product of -1. So if you multiplied the slopes of perpendicular lines, you would get -1 as an answer. First thing we're going to talk about is slope-intercept form. So in the vocab, we talked about what slope-intercept form was, the y equals mx plus b. M is our slope, so that's where our slope goes. We multiply it by x. And b is our y-intercept. So wherever our graph crosses the y-axis, that number goes in for b. So now we're going to write an equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, so to write an equation in slope-intercept form, we need to know what m is and we need to know what b is. Okay, so m is our slope. We know how to do slope. We did that in the last section. We do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We've got 2 points on the graph here. So y2 minus y1, I could have -2 minus a -1. And on the bottom, x2 minus x1, I could have 0 minus a -4. When I do this, both of them minusing negatives turns into adding. So -2 plus 1 is -1. 0 plus 4 is 4. So my slope is -1/4. For my b value, again, that's my y-intercept. It's where it crosses the y-axis. That's this point right here. And we take the y-coordinate. So b is a -2. So when we have our y equals mx plus b, I have m and I have b. So I'm going to plug those in. M is -1/4. B is a -2. So my equation is going to be y is equal to -1/4 x minus 2. We don't need a graph to write an equation. We can also be given either a slope and a point, or 2 points. Either one would be just fine. Again, we're still looking for what m and b are equal to. In this first one, I'm told that the slope is 4/3 and it passes through point 0.04. Slope is 4/3, so m is 4/3. Passes through this point. Okay, the first point is a 0. That means it's a y-intercept. Okay, so if my x value is 0, I know my y-intercept. It's right here at 4. So my equation would be y is equal to 4/3 x plus 4. For the second one, now I'm just told that it passes through these 2 points. Okay, slope, since I'm not given the slope, I have to find the slope. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 10 minus a -6 over -4 minus 0. Subtracting a negative turns into adding a positive. 10 plus 6 is 16. -4 minus 0 is -4. 16 divided by -4 is -4. For my y-intercept, again, one of my points has a 0 for x. So that is my y-intercept right there. It means my b value is a -6. It's the y-coordinate. So my equation would be y is equal to -4x minus 6. Sometimes we can't write it directly into slope-intercept form, so then we have to use what's called point-slope form first before we can get it into slope-intercept. So point-slope form, y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now how this works, again, x1 and y1, that's from that coordinate or the point that we're given. Okay, we are given that point. And then m is still our slope. Okay, so usually if we're given the slope and a point on the line that's not the intercept, we use point-slope form first and then get it into slope-intercept. Okay, so a couple of examples here. Write an equation of the line that goes through the point 6, -2 with a slope of -4. So again, if you'll notice, this isn't a y-intercept because x is not 0. So what I need to do is, here's my x1, here's my y1, and I'm going to use that point slope formula, that y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Okay? So I'm going to have y minus my y1 is equal to my m times x minus my x1. And now I'm just going to solve for y. Subtracting a negative is just like adding a positive. I distribute the negative 4, so I get y plus 2 is equal to negative 4x plus 24. Subtract 2 from both sides, and my equation is y is equal to negative 4x plus 22. My next one, I've got the line that goes through the point 2, 3, so I've got my x1 and y1. I've got my slope of 1/2, so y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Distribute the 1/2, and I get y minus 3 is equal to 1/2 x minus 1. Solving for y, I add 3 to both sides. I get y is equal to 1/2 x plus 2. Go ahead and pause the video and find the equation of this line before hitting play and seeing how you did. Okay, so we should have had x1, y1 as negative 2, negative 1, and m is negative 3. So if we plug that in, I should have had y minus a negative 1 is equal to negative 3 times x minus a negative 2. Both of the minusing negatives turned into adding positives, so it becomes y plus 1 is equal to negative 3 times x plus 2. Distribute the negative 3, y plus 1 is equal to negative 3x minus 6. Subtract 1 from both sides. My equation is y is equal to negative 3x minus 7. So now we're going to write an equation when we're only given 2 points. Okay, so we're still going to use point-slope form. The only difference is now I need to find m first. And then once I have m, I can use my slope and a point and go from there. So finding my slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, negative 3 minus 7 over 3 minus a negative 2. I get negative 10 over 5. My slope is negative 2. So at this point, and then I can just pick one or the other. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to use 3, negative 3. So then I do y minus my y is equal to m times x minus the x coordinate. Adding a positive, distribute the negative 2. I get y plus 3 is equal to negative 2x plus 6. Subtract 3 from both sides. My equation is y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. Go ahead and pause the video and give this one a try before hitting play and seeing how you did. Okay, using the slope formula, we should have gotten that our slope is a negative 5/2. And then using the slope in one of the points, I chose 2, negative 4. I get y plus 4 is equal to negative 5/2 x plus 5 after I distribute. Subtract 4 from both sides, I get y is equal to negative 5/2 x plus 1. Next thing we're going to do is we're also going to use parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, so two non-vertical lines are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. So if they have the same slope, they're parallel. All vertical lines are parallel to each other. Perpendicular, two lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is negative 1. Also, we can also say that their slopes are opposite reciprocals. Okay, so flip the fraction, change the sign. And vertical lines are always perpendicular to horizontal lines. We're going to use these to find equations as well. So this is what it's going to look like. We're going to write an equation that passes through the point 5, negative 6, and it's perpendicular with this equation here. So I still need my slope. Okay, well, this slope is negative 3/2. Okay, if I want to do the opposite reciprocal, I would change the sign, so instead of negative, it's positive, and I'd flip the fraction. This is going to be my slope. Okay, so perpendicular, we use opposite reciprocal slopes. And I'm still going to use this point here, so y minus the y coordinate is equal to my new slope times x minus my x coordinate. Change it to adding a positive, distribute there. Y plus 6 is equal to 2/3 x minus 10/3. Subtract 6 from both sides. Y is equal to 2/3 x. Okay, when I take negative 10/3 minus 6, if I do that in thirds, it's minus 18/3. So I would get negative 28/3. There would be my equation right there. That is perpendicular to the one given and goes through the point 5, negative 6. Okay, so now our equation, we've got the point here, and now we're gonna do parallel. Well, parallel means same slope. Okay, so the slope of this line is 3/4, so the slope of mine is also gonna be 3/4. Okay, so parallel means same, perpendicular, opposite, reciprocal. So I do y minus my y value is equal to m times x minus my x value. Distribute the 4/3. I get 4/3 x minus 9/4. Add 7 to both sides. Okay, again, since we're adding to a fraction, I need to add it in terms of the denominator, so 7 is the same as 28/4. So 4 will stay on the bottom. Negative 9 plus 28, that gives us 19. Or 17, sorry, 17. So I should have 3/4 x plus 17/4 as my equation that goes through 3, 7 and is parallel to the line given.